Welcome to Season 10. With more people working remotely than ever before, it helps to have digital technologies that help you feel a sense of normalcy and connection. And if you have work that requires face-to-face collaboration, then you're really feeling the brunt of this pandemic. In fact, we all are. But all hope is not lost, because with tools like the one you're about to see and hear about, you can still collaborate remotely and in real time without missing a beat. Hi, I'm 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗶𝗲𝗀𝗀, and I'm so honored that my friend and technologist extraordinaire, Joseph Powell, could take time out of his schedule to give us a demo of his whiteboarding app. It's helped me tremendously in shaving time spent on video calls, trying to reach a consensus. I can't wait for him to share it with you. This is Season 10, Episode 122. Hey there, as you know, this is Season 10, and we are doing, for the first time ever, live workflow consultations. And here to demo his Thinksmart Whiteboarding app is none other than my good friend and trusted advisor for all things technology, Joseph Powell. How are you, Joseph?
Hello, I'm good, Alicia. Nice to meet you again. Nice to see you again. How are you?
Joe and I have only been talking to each other every day for like maybe the past 3 months, like literally every single day. And we'll actually let you in on why we've been communicating so frequently lately. But first, Joe, welcome back to the show. It's so good to have you back on. I'm
Thank you very
really
much.
excited because I can't wait for everyone to not only hear, but to also see how your app actually works. So the first time you came onto the podcast, we were talking about your tutoring company, $10tutors.com, and the fact that you're able to use your Thinksmart Whiteboarding app to actually facilitate these remote tutoring sessions with students.
Right.
So before we get into the app itself, though, can you tell us again, for those who are listening or seeing you for the first time, can you tell us again what actually led to you creating the Thinksmart Whiteboard app?
Yes, so it's more of a twofold story, but basically a few years ago when I was in a corporate boardroom, we were trying to whiteboard with other people who were not there in the boardroom, and all we could do was just take pictures of whatever everyone was writing. And some people would do maybe FaceTime with the other person and show them writing onto the board. And we just saw how inefficient that was and how it really didn't connect everyone into the room. And then on top of that, it just seemed to be very clunky. So that was one of the reasons that we came up with the Thinksmart Whiteboard app. And then on top of that, there was another story of when I was doing tutoring with my boss's daughter. I remember when I was an intern and she just needed help with algebra. I was currently living in Atlanta. She was in Toronto, Canada. And I said, well, can you just tell me exactly how we can interface with each other so I can write anything down? And when I looked for solutions, there was nothing out there. There were a few whiteboarding apps, but none of them were very intuitive. And then a lot of them would only post the results after you have written about 10 seconds. So that's not very real time because you need to be just like you're there right in front of each other to engage with the learning part of it. So that's basically how it was born. And now since COVID has happened, the need for virtual tutoring has increased by 1,000-fold. There's so many people that started calling about that and started asking about it. So we want to try to provide a free or low cost app for anybody who needs it. So we provide the software to students and teachers, or if they don't have any teachers that are available to get tutoring, we do in-house tutoring also. So that's basically how it was born.
And so speaking of the tutoring aspect, tell us a little bit more about your company, $10 Tutors, because as you just alluded to, because of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're unfortunately still in the midst of, almost overnight, literally, schools from the kindergarten all the way to the college level, all of a sudden had to go remote.
Right.
And $10tutors.com saw a significant surge in demand for the tutoring service. And I think what's so brilliant in terms of the timing, and not just the timing, Joseph, but also the fact that you have such a great product as well as a service, is that you're providing, not only you and your tutors provide the tutoring remotely, but you have this app to facilitate a highly interactive and highly engaged tutoring session with your students. So tell us a little bit more about how a typical $10 tutors session actually works.
Right. So basically, if you happen to need any kind of tutoring, you log on to the website, which is www.10dollartutors.com, everything spelled out with an S on the end. And so once you go to that site, you basically schedule an appointment. At that time, it will walk you through all the steps that you need to do. You schedule an appointment, that was step number one. Step number two is you download the app. And then step number three is you just schedule a phone call to speak to someone. And that's basically how it happens. At that point, once you schedule an appointment, someone will be in contact with you about being able to get onto that tutoring session. Yep. And as you see right there, $10dollartutors.com, that's the website. And
Yes.
you just scroll down to the middle. And
Okay.
that's another thing that we're doing is also saying through the pandemic, we also offer group tutoring sessions. So you can get a feel of exactly how we do the tutoring without even having to pay for it. So it's more of like a trial basis before paying $10. So yep, step number one, you schedule an appointment. Step number two, you download the whiteboard app. And then step number three is you just dial the conference number when it's time for you to dial into it. And then we'll walk you through the rest of it. And literally downloading the app and using it takes less than 8 minutes. So we've timed it. The shortest amount of time that it took was 2.5 minutes. The longest time has been about 7 minutes. So once
Wow.
you download that app, you just stand by and wait for someone to connect to your whiteboard, and then they start tutoring you in whatever subject you need help with.
Okay, so let's focus. And for those who don't have the benefit of seeing this right now, what I did is I have logged into $10dollartutors.com. And as Joe has just described, I've scrolled down to about the middle of the home page here. And you can see, as he just described, in 3 very easy steps. Step 1, you schedule your appointment. Step 2, you download the whiteboard app. And then step 3, you dial into the conference number that's provided to you. So let's focus right now, if we can, on step number 2, downloading the app. So walk us through that, Joe.
Right. So basically, the only thing you have to do is click on the word download that's underneath where it says 3 minutes. Just click on that,
Okay.
download the app. And you'll see that in the lower left-hand corner, it says whiteboard 2 zip. That's the
Yes.
file that you open.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that you already have that installed, but so we don't have to go through all of the steps, but I'll just show you where you go after you open that app,
Okay.
after open that folder.
Yes. So the folder was called Deploy To, and now
Yep.
it's pulled up a new window.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then and then you open the deploy to folder. And from that moment, you click on the setup icon. And
Okay.
also, and I believe that may not be on your screen because it may be on a separate screen aside from the where we're looking at the step 1, 2, and 3. But you just double click on the icon that says setup, and then it will walk you through the rest of it. And you just
Okay.
accept all of the defaults. You say, hey, well, this may not be an app in the App Store. You just click run anyway. After that, you click on to do the next steps to install. And it also installs what we call a VPN. And that basically establishes a secure connection between you and us. So that makes sure that no one interferes with anything that you're writing back and forth to each other, and that your connection will not be monitored. So that's the reason why we also use a lot of secure encryption inside the app and outside of the app with a VPN. So it has 2 levels of encryption. Most companies only have 1. And then on
That's
top of
really
that,
important.
yeah, and on top of that, there's so many things that can happen that can go wrong when it comes to that. So that's the reason why we always have encryption. Every company, I know, unfortunately, not every company has that, but those are something that we always, in my past life when I was dealing with cybersecurity, I always recommended that for all of my clients.
Okay. So once we download the app, and if we could just go back a step
Mhm.
or two, is the app free? Is there currently a cost for the app, the
No,
whiteboard app?
there is currently no cost for the app.
Okay.
You will be able to get enhanced features later on, and that will be a subscription model. But for right now, the app is completely free. There are going to be things that we're going to add and roll out later, but our whole mantra is trying to provide something for free or low cost so everyone would be able to enjoy those benefits. Because if there wouldn't have been there wouldn't have been very much for me to learn in the way of programming or anything else if I didn't have those things for free as well. So that's why we want to pass that on.
Paying it forward, right?
Yes. As much as we possibly can.
Yes. So, okay, Joe, so we can download the app for free. Now, here's something else that's really important to point out is that this app is really designed currently for the Microsoft Surface Book. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the Surface Book, the Microsoft Surface, any device that basically can have a pen that goes with it, and most of those are usually Windows computers. Yes.
Yes.
That's it. And you generally have a pen that goes along with it, like I have with mine. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. That's it.
My pen.
and people will say, well, why don't you have it for phones? And we do have the app that's available for phones that you'll be able to use, but the whole purpose of that experience is to make sure that it's viable for us to use in business situations. A lot of times on your phone, the screen is a little too small. So it's ideal to use an actual computer or an actual tablet that has a pen that you can interface with anyone that you want to work with. So it's for instance, it's very difficult to write if you're teaching in math or you're writing words. It's hard to do that with your finger. Everybody's seen the whiteboard on their phones, but if they're trying to write with their fingers, that's not very helpful, and the words are too large and it's hard to see. So that's why we always use a pen, and that's why using the Surface products have been the best. And there are other products that are coming out that will be compatible with this software too.
Okay, that's good to know. So I have my own Surface Book here. And the one that I have no idea which model it is, Joseph, but I know you would know. So I have it is a detachable tablet, but it has the hard surface keyboard. I know there's also the type where it's more of a softer
right, like
type
mine.
keyboard.
And there's some that are like this that have
Yes.
a keyboard that you can take apart yourself. And this is more of a kind of a flimsy keyboard. It still works. Some people prefer this one because it's slightly lighter than some of the other Surface devices.
So what I'm going to do at this point is what I'd like to do is have us do an actual demonstration of how the app actually works real time. So I was wondering, I know there's two main ways that we can use this. So one is what I refer to as freestyle, where we can almost do a simulation of just freehand writing on a whiteboard, and you and I would be able to collaborate. And then if you're up for it, Joseph, I'd like to kind of give people a sneak peek on some of the things that we've personally been working on together from a software development standpoint. So where we'll actually upload an image and start to make annotations that way. So how should we do this? Should you share your screen? Do I need to? I know we first have to connect with each other, right? So in order for this to work, in order for us to collaborate in real time, we both need to have the app installed on our respective surfaces. And then from there, what do we need to do next?
From there, this will be a simple one for the all intents and purposes of this demo. I will give you a sample, a computer that's already ready to go. So all we have to do is just connect to that, and in turn, we'll connect to each other. So when you have your app open, go ahead and click on the option on the upper left-hand corner that says join a session.
Okay. And I don't think I'm in the right one. So where do I need to go? So I have to go to my folder, my documents, right? Okay.
And in the lower left-hand corner, you can just, if you don't have that icon that's called Thinksmart Whiteboard, just type the word think.
Okay. So I'm going to type that here in the search. And can you see my screen by any chance?
I don't right now at the moment.
Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen first for everyone who's watching. Can you see it now?
Yep,
yes.
I see it.
Okay, perfect. So I typed in think.
Right.
And because I have it installed already, up comes the Thinksmart Whiteboard version 4.01. Okay.
Right.
All right.
And the only thing that you need to do is just click on the option number 1 that says join a session.
Okay, so there's a button on the left-hand side of the screen called Join a Session, and now it's a pop-up window has come up asking me to enter the address. And this is your IP address that you're about to give me?
Right. So this is my
Okay.
personal IP address, but in the future, everyone else will have their own personal addresses. So it's just like your own phone number. Everyone gets their own.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, how do people who are using this for the first time, where do you typically tell them to go to look for that IP address?
It will always be in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. So where it says local address,
Oh,
that will be
yes,
the number that you will provide to
right
your
here.
colleagues. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So once after you install the program and you restart your computer, that new app, that new number will show up for you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and so now I need to enter you're going to give me your IP address,
Yep. And
right?
the
Okay.
and yep, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. The IP address is 188.227.57.159.
Okay, and then I'll click OK.
Right? And you see on the left-hand side where it says connected. So
Yes.
so right there where you are, I'm going to write something really quickly to you.
Okay. So Joe just wrote hello.
Yep. There you go. And
And
then,
then
yep. And so
then
you
I'm
can
going
write
to
something
write
back.
hi there.
Yep.
This is really cool. And again, we're using our pins that come with the
Right. These
Surface.
pens that come with it. Yep.
Yes, and we're writing directly onto literally onto the surface of the onto the screen, I should say,
Right.
of the laptop.
Right. And for
Okay.
some people, and one thing I just wanted to add in, if there's some people that have um, uh, already have a touch screen or Windows computer, they don't need to go out and purchase another tablet, a Windows tablet or a Microsoft Surface. So if you have a Windows where you can install Microsoft Word and Office, as long as you have all of those installed, you'll definitely be able to install the Thinksmart Whiteboard app. So I would tell everyone, don't go out and waste any money on doing that. The whole point of us using software is to facilitate what we already have and not have to
Correct.
spend extra money to do what we've already needed to do in the first place.
Yes. Well, thank you for being so practical with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to show a feature that I think is, I don't know, I just think it's so cool. And maybe I'm just easily impressed. I don't know. But I know if I click the eraser button here, I can literally erase just as a whiteboard when you have you have those dry erase markers that you're working with, and then you have that eraser. Hopefully that's handy. And now I've literally just erased everything that we wrote freehand onto the virtual whiteboard.
Right.
So let's do a typical a mock-up, if you will, of a typical tutoring session. So there may be a student, I don't know, I'm just gonna write a problem here.
Hmm. And then you just go,
Actually,
yep, and just go
I need
back
to
to your, yep, turn it into a pen,
to the
click on the
pen.
pen icon.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. Okay, so I don't know, Joe, 3x plus 5 equals, I don't know,
We'll just do 10.
10.
Okay.
Okay. Well, actually, let me do the eraser here. See, I'm getting good at this. Okay, so we have 3x plus 5 equals 10. How do we solve for x?
Right. So I would say, well, so why don't we see how we can isolate the like terms? That's the number one thing that you do when you're trying to work in algebra and trying to solve for a certain problem. So, so as a teacher, I would say, okay, well, why don't we just see what we can do to move this 5 from this side over to this side? How would we do that?
Now, can I
And
ask you, I'm sorry, Joe, can I
go ahead.
ask you a really quick question? I noticed when I wrote out the equation first onto the screen, it appeared in black ink or
Hmm.
black colored font. But when you just wrote an arrow on the screen, it showed up in blue. Did you intentionally change the
Yes.
color? Okay,
Yes.
okay,
And
great.
I do that just so let's just say if what if it's not just you and me? What if there are 17 people in the
Exactly,
session?
yes.
They can each choose their own color so everyone could know who's writing what. And when someone's talking, they'll say, oh, I'm the one writing in blue. I'm the one writing in green. I'm the one writing in purple. So that's what we can do. And that was on purpose, so we would be able to distinguish the difference.
And the beauty of this is, like, we're literally using Zoom right now to record this podcasting and video session. And so if you have some, I'm just thinking of using this in a working environment. If you have a brainstorming session, and let's say if there's some people who are unable to make it to that particular session, you can actually still use your whiteboarding app while recording via Zoom, and then just take that video file and share that with your other colleagues who weren't able to participate live during the session.
Right. And what some people have asked me is, they were saying, well, I can use my own whiteboard app or my own whiteboard solution. And I would say that's really good, because we also like a robust archive of things that you can use. Just say if you wanted to use the whiteboard app within Zoom, you can, but unfortunately, it's very hard for someone else to write back and forth, because you have to hand over control to them. They have to write, and then they have to hand control back over to you. So it's kind of clunky. We want to be able to write instantly, which shows us how to interact with each other. And then on top of that, with Zoom, you can't load a lot of times images onto the screen. It's just purely a whiteboard. So let's just say if two people are studying the parts of the human body, one person can load a picture, another person can start writing and annotating on that. Oh, well, this is the arm, this is the femur, this is the tibia. So they will be able to write things back and forth. So the thing that I love about this is that it can be used in so many different ways.
Yes.
And not just have to be restricted to using the Zoom app or having to create an account and having to pay for it. You just download it and it's free, and anyone can use it.
And may I just say, I'm very impressed that you remembered the names of your bones.
Those might be the only 3 that I remember. So
I'm thinking, well, somebody paid attention in biology class.
I know. I'm caring much more about statistics. Those are and math. Don't ask me anything about history, though. Now I have a horrible memory.
Okay, so let's get back to solving our equation. So I'm going to say, okay, Mr. Joe. So 3x, let's say, equals 10 minus 5. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
To do now? Okay.
And that's what I would tell them to do, is and make sure they write out. So for instance, I would even say for some students who are just learning this, put every step. So even say -5 over here, so you'll know that these cancel out. But I would even tell them to do that. But they can still continue, because you've already understood that. So that's what we do. But we can continue.
Okay, and so then I'm going to say, so that means 3x equals 5, and then we divide each side by 3, right? So whatever 5 over 3 is that like
that's it? Yep. No, and we still can leave it just like that. A lot of times when they might want to have it as an improper fraction, or we can write it as another fraction, mixed fraction. So or decimal. So, but no, but this is fine. But this is just a way to practically explain how we do our tutoring sessions. And you see how easy it was for me to write something and then you to write something back. That's the whole purpose of a tutoring session. You don't want the software to get in the way of learning. And so that's what you're looking at doing right now. So when I wrote onto the screen, this is -5 or this is -5, we are able to understand that, rather than saying, oh, wait, how do I erase this? Oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? That's the thing that you do not want to have when you have a software. And in programming terms, that's basically a bad GUI, a bad graphical user interface, if you have something where people can't easily figure out how to do something. So we don't want our software to get in the way of your brainstorming.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. So do you ever find yourself running out of real estate as you're writing or collaborating on the whiteboard here? Yes.
And we do have issues with that right now. One thing that we also always do is, like, we can end up saving a snapshot. So let's watch. I'm going to do this myself.
Okay.
I'm going to make a copy of this snapshot that I'm doing right now.
And how are you going to do that?
Yep. And what I would do is, and you see the clock that's on the in the action menu in the
Oh,
lower left-hand
yes.
corner. You can save
Yes.
a snapshot and then come back to that later.
So right here.
Right.
Okay.
And I just clicked on that. I clicked take scribble snapshot. I'm going to clear the scribbles on the screen,
Okay.
and you see how it's erased. And I can go and write something else. I was like, okay, well, I want to figure out how do we do the area of this square.
Okay.
Area equals length times width. Oh, so whatever we wanted to do.
Right.
Um, so, and I said, okay, well, I want to go back to what we were doing before. Some student will say, well, can you show me what we were working on before? I said, oh, sure. Let me go ahead and I'll just save this scribble that we had, and then we can go back. We can come back to that later. Let me clear this and go back and load the snapshot that we had before. And I'll go ahead and just refresh that. And you see that goes back to what we were just working on
Yes.
before. We
Oh,
can
that's
save
cool.
copies of that. That's one thing to do, one quick thing to save it. But there's always going to be the chance. That's the whole purpose of a whiteboard. Even if a whiteboard fills up an entire room, there's always going to be somebody who wants to go back to what we need, or we start to run out. So we can always save copies of what we worked on, and then we can come back to them later. On top
Okay.
of that, we will have basically a premium version of the software that allows you to do a lot more. So those are the ones that you actually start paying for. But for these features, everyone is very, very happy with what we have here, because they just said, oh, well, this is good. You can save it, you can load it back, we can do what we need to. So no, this is good. But and on top of that, there are always other things that you can do. You save them to the screenshots to a folder where you can go and look at those later and study them as notes. Or you can just, like I said, for one screen, if you wanted to go back to it, just a quick and dirty way to do that is just to take that snapshot of what you just did before they erase the screen, before the teacher erases it, and then you can go back to it.
Sure. So let me get back here, Joe, because what I'd like to do now is also kind of go through another way of using the app for those of us in the business world who may
Hmm.
say, well, I don't have any students, or if they, if they want to also figure out how to use it in addition to working with the students that they may have in their household.
Hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some information here. Just give me a second. I'd like to pull up some things that we've been working on. So I'm going
Okay.
to officially make a revelation that we have been working on a project together, a
Hmm.
software development project together, and Joe has taken the lead on that. And what we are doing, I have a methodology that I created years ago for creating business infrastructure. And let me go ahead and pull this up here so I can share it with everyone and you can see my screen. So this is a diagram that I have up here on the screen right now, where it's a very visual way of depicting how my framework for creating business infrastructure works. So you'll notice that there are some circles here that are numbered 1 to 7 in these gray circles here. And this literally just describes in one page how the framework works. And so a considerable amount of this framework is currently done manually. We have a prototype for software, but it has only been used internally, and it has not been made for, what's the term, commercial use? Is
Hmm.
that the correct term,
Yep.
Joe? Okay, so that's what Joe and I are working on literally right now. We're in the midst of preparing for an MVP version of software, commercial software, that anyone who's listening to this podcast or watching this right now would literally be able to have access to. And so if you'll notice in this diagram, it starts off with some wheels here, like cognitive wheels. And that's to represent the fact that it always starts with a brainstorming exercise to figure out all of the different activities that are performed within your company, no matter how mundane or how complex. And then once you know all of those different tasks, you then want to group similar tasks into departments. And once you have those departments identified, you then want to assign tasks to specific roles. So that represents this first little section that you see here on this diagram. Now stay with me for a second here, because the next thing that I'm going to do is pull up some images. So one of the next things that we started working on together, and I had all of this, I promise you, Joe, and I had it pulled up, but on a different on
Oh
a
no.
different computer. So that's why it's taking me a while. Okay, so here we go here. One of the things that Joe asked me to do was to start putting together a storyboard. And I was thinking, this is me being a process person, I was thinking I had to get into Microsoft Visio and literally start sketching out a flowchart. But then I realized, using kind of the concept of 𝗟𝗏𝗻𝗀, where you create these short 30-second video clips, I said, why not just write this storyboard out onto index cards?
Mm-hmm.
So what you see here on the screen ahead of you are the first 3 index cards that I created. And Joe and I started looking at this, and this is the point where I'd like to pull this up into the Thinksmart Whiteboard app, so
Okay.
that we can start annotating it and people can see just how cool this app really is. Not that
Okay.
they don't know already, but
No, and I can, if you can pull that back up, pull that screenshot back up, I can load it
okay.
in, and then we can write onto it. I'll do the whole thing.
Okay, so I need
Just
to
share your screen
share the
again.
screen again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen that shows the index cards with the storyboard. And just so you know, if for those of you who are watching this right now, I'm showing only 3 cards, but there's really, like, I think we're up to like number 40 or something like that.
Right.
So there's the screen.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I just took a snapshot of that. I'm saving it, and then I'll load
Okay.
it into the.
Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to show the whiteboard app now. Okay.
Okay, and I'm loading what we just looked at.
So Joe is literally going to take that image, and while you're doing that, I should explain. Once I sat down and really thought through, okay, what are the sequence of steps that need to take place? This is going to be a web-based app, by the way. What are the sequence of steps? And oh my gosh, it was really tedious trying to think through it.
Mm-hmm.
And as Joe and I started talking through it, I still inadvertently left out some steps. That's how it goes in the process
I
world,
know.
especially when you're so used to doing something, when you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to capture it for someone else to follow. It's just human nature for you to inadvertently leave out some steps. So it
Mm-hmm.
definitely wasn't intentional. But it was great to be able to use the whiteboard app to highlight things, to do annotations, and to make sure we really understood it. So as soon as I drew this out onto these index cards, I actually took a picture of it using my phone. And then from there, I uploaded it, or I attached it into Slack. So Joe and I communicate
Mm-hmm.
quite frequently via
Yep.
Slack, and it just helps us keep all of our thoughts as it relates to this software development project
Right.
organized and in one place. So, okay, right now, Joe has pulled up the image of the index cards, the first 3 that
Right.
represent the starting point for the storyboard. Now, one of the things I remember, Joe, when I first shared this to you and we started talking through it, you said, well, obviously, a new user or a new visitor to the site would obviously have to enter in some information about themselves and their company first. And I was like, oh, you know what? You're right. So how would we, let's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
show people how we
That'll be
would,
perfect.
how we
Yep.
started to annotate this.
Yeah. So if let's just say this is going to be the starting point of the website.
Mm-hmm.
When it says, okay, how do you want to start? I want you to work with my business one department at a time, or I want to analyze, do the business parts analysis for my entire company. So let's just say if they wanted to do one department at a time, that's fine. And I basically wrote that, said we would do that. And basically what a storyboard is basically says what each computer screen or what each screen looks like after you start interacting with someone. So these are more kind of technical terms. But between steps in 1 and 2, what if we wanted to say something like, oh, well, we have step 1, that's right here. We also have step number 2, that's right here. But it's saying something else here. Let's start by figuring out everything you do or need to do in your organization. What if we want to make this a little bit more personalized? What if we want to say, okay, Alicia, why don't we make it more personalized for them? So instead of it saying, I'm going to cross this out in blue.
Okay.
What if we want to, instead of saying your organization right here, what if we don't want it to say your organization? What if we wanted it to say what the name of their organization actually is? So we can have something, a card, maybe 1A, in
Yes.
between 1 and 2. So we can say in that card, what is your company name? What is your company's name?
Mm-hmm.
And if we wanted to do that, we could say, oh, okay, well, and then they could say, oh, well, it is, let's just say we use me as an example. And pardon me for always doing some things crooked. That's just how I am. So, uh, I, but that's the whole point of collaboration. We're not trying to
Right.
make everything look pretty. We're trying
Right.
to come up with quick ideas, save them, and then we move and we can update them in Visio, or we can do that in Microsoft Word. We can do it in PowerPoint.
Correct.
That's the whole point of this. So let's just say, we'll just say, okay, what's $10 tutors? And I said, oh, well, then that would be perfect. So we can have that there. So once we fix in our code, instead of saying on step number 2, on index card number 2, let's start figuring out everything you do or need to do in your organization. It will say, let's start figuring out everything you do or need to do in $10
$10
tutors.
tutors. Got it. Got it.
$10 tutors right here.
Yes.
So
And
there you go.
I love how you just highlighted that. Now, something else, going back to we were talking about index card number 2.
Hmm.
So the next piece is for the user to be able to select an area where they would like to start. So we have accounting and finance,
Hmm.
human resources, sales and marketing, operations and administration, legal compliance, and technology. And what I was explaining to you, Joe, is that so right now for the MVP version of this software, we're only going to focus on the accounting and finance area.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I remember explaining to you, and we talked through this in great detail, was that the moment someone selects accounting and finance, for example, so
Hmm.
how do I, let's see, is this the highlight or
Yeah,
here's the
that's the
highlighter?
highlight. You can, but you can even do, yeah, highlight is fine, and then you can just, yep.
And so I've now highlighted accounting and finance. And the reason I did that was to be able to explain, let's say on card 2, the area selected needs to become a different color, new color.
Hmm.
And so basically what we were talking about is the fact that maybe everything else would be grayed out, and to really visually show, okay, let's make sure that when you selected accounting and finance, that that is indeed what you intended to select before moving forward or advancing to the next screen.
Right. Yep.
Yes.
And then that will be, and then once we're working on that, we'll get our programmers to say, okay, well, we'll have it to where when someone clicks on it, on accounting and finance, it will turn blue or it will turn yellow to show that it's something that's highlighted. And they'll say, okay, well, I'm ready to go to the next step. So once they've selected that, something will pop up and say, good job, you've chosen an area. Let's go to figure out what's next. And then the next thing would be the third area, and we'll start talking about these topics.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yep. So I think that will this is going to be excellent once we start working on these items, and we'll try to figure out how we go through this whole entire process. So guess what? We figured out how to brainstorm and work on some of our ideas instead of let's just say we were talking over the phone and we did not have any of this. It will be hard to say, oh, well, remember on card number 2 we said this one,
Right.
and on this was, and you'll be trying to figure out, and it's like, well, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what you said. I know it was something, and that's the whole purpose of doing whiteboarding sessions.
Exactly.
So we can use this in order to help work on this app, and we did not have to leave our home. And then on top of that, if both of us have pens, we can write this out. So we'll have a reference point on what we need to talk about the next time. And we'll start that meeting and say, oh, remember the last time we did this? And this is what we talked about. So,
And also like to just say really quickly, one other great thing about this. So I do a lot of process map review sessions with my clients, and now traditionally I would have done most of those in person or face to face, but now, because we're all working remotely, we're doing these remote sessions where we use some type of screen sharing tool, whether it be Microsoft Teams or Skype or Zoom. And what I've always found, Joe, because I do most of my process mapping and flowcharting using Microsoft Visio, is it's very difficult to make changes within the program in the midst of reviewing that actual diagram or that
right.
actual flowchart.
Mhm.
Instead, having something like this where I can just upload an image of the map, and literally it's so much easier and faster and quicker
Right.
to just do the annotations by hand, save that image, and then to your point, I can then go back and reference that, and once I go into the original Visio file, I now have a snapshot of everything that we reviewed while we were going through that actual everything we brainstormed, excuse me, or any changes that were made or updates that needed to be, that were requested. I can review, I can then go through that and make those updates and those changes. So
Right.
how would I be able to save this work? Because I don't want to lose this. So how would I
Right.
make sure that I save this before we moved on to the next set of index cards?
Right. So, and before we move on, all you have to do is go to the action menu in the lower left-hand corner with that icon that looks like a disk, the picture of a
Yes.
disk,
Mm-hmm.
and it says save current screenshot, and it saves everything as a permanent image. So it just tells you where it's saved in your My Documents Thinksmart Whiteboard folder.
Yes. Okay.
So once it's saved there, you will be able to go back and retrieve that later. And now you can just clear that screen by clicking on either, there are two places to the right where it says clear screen. At the lower
Mm-hmm.
right-hand corner, you can say clear
Oh,
the
clear
entire screen.
screen. Okay.
Or you could do clear screen on the left-hand side where it says the picture of the X. And you
Let's
can
try
clear the
that one.
screen there.
Oh,
Yep.
look at that. Now, can I undo?
Well, that's removing the last scribble.
Oh,
So
the
that means,
scribble.
so if
Okay.
you write something and if you mess up, you can undo the last thing that you just wrote. You can remove that last scribble. So you can write something out. Uh, I can tell you one thing that I'll do. I can say hello. J, and I've misspelled my name. Instead of J-O-E, it says J-A-E. I said, okay, well, let's go back. And I'll just click on the
Oh, you did
undo.
that on purpose.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that, I was just to demonstrate how I'm
Okay.
removing the last thing that I just wrote, the last stroke that I just made.
Oh, okay.
Sort of like paint strokes. Whenever you're writing, you can just remove the last thing. So if you're writing things on top of each other, you can remove that last thing that you just wrote.
Okay, just by clicking
Just
this
by
right
clicking the
there.
remove last scribble. So it's
Okay.
not the same as an undo. It's more about when you write something out as a teacher and you said, oh shoot, I wrote the wrong thing there. Instead of trying to go and erase it and scribble and erase
Starting
everything,
over.
just remove the last thing you wrote.
Well, this has been excellent. So, Joe, while we still have this up on the screen,
Mhm.
obviously this is the Business Infrastructure Podcast, and
Right.
you've walked us through the process of how we actually find the app online at $10tutors.com, how we download it, and how now you've given us a demo of how we can actually use it in
Mhm.
multiple ways. So process, as we know, is just one piece of the business infrastructure puzzle. The other two are people, the people component, as well as the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those who are listening to this show for the first time, business infrastructure is simply a system for how you link your people, your processes, and your tools together so that growth happens in a profitable and sustainable way. Now, from a people standpoint, yes. Oh, you know what? I didn't even think to write that. Yes, business infrastructure is people, processes, and tools.
Okay.
And when we say tools, that means everything from technologies like the digital technologies, such as what Joe has created with his Thinksmart Whiteboard app, as well as equipment. It could be, the actual, for example, we have to have the Surface in order to use this, in order to make this process work. We have to have a certain type of laptop with certain features. You would also obviously have to have access to high-speed internet. That would be a given. And then as far as the people aspect is concerned, you obviously, because it is the whole point of this is to be able to collaborate in real time. You obviously have to have other people that you can use this tool with. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you can think of in terms of people to potentially leverage when it comes to utilizing this app? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming if there's technical support, obviously. How do
Mm-hmm.
people actually, if they run into any type of technical difficulty, what's the best way for them to contact someone at your company?
So basically, what we're doing now is we we have a channel, and it's very popular with a lot of tech companies, and we've found a way to leverage that with the general public and to have that commercially available. So there's an app that's called Slack. You can install it on your cell phone. You can have it on a Chromebook. You can have it on the internet. You can have it on Linux. I mean, there are different operating systems on the iOS, iPad. So what we do is we invite people into our chat rooms. And so if anyone ever has any question, what we are committed to is answering any questions within 10 to 15 minutes. Somebody has a question,
Wow.
we will answer it there, and there will always be somewhere in that channel during business hours waiting to help them. So that's better than even sending an email, which they can also do. Like, say, for instance, there might be some things that might be too complicated to handle in chat, or there might be privacy concerns. We don't want someone to discuss their payment details in the chat because it's a big chat room. So what
Sure.
they can do is they can send an email to us, and we will be able to help them out with whatever that's more complicated than some of the simple issues, like I can't connect to someone else's whiteboard, or I can't get it installed, or what's the phone number to dial into. So we answer all of those questions online, and if they need help, they can also email us, and we have one dedicated IT person. Her name is Karen, and it's Karen at $10tutors.com. And she would definitely be able to help out with anyone else. And you can always even go directly to the website and look at some of the FAQs, because we have frequently asked questions there. But downloading that Slack app, and we walk you through that. We'll just show you how to get into that chat room, and then we'll be able to answer any questions.
Which is also free. I should
Yes.
just kind of throw that in there really
Yes.
quickly. And what I love about Slack, so a lot of times when Joe and I are collaborating, we might have difficulty using Zoom for whatever reason, because, obviously Zoom is so popular these days,
Hmm.
and sometimes they experience downtime and because of bandwidth issues. So we actually can talk to each other through Slack
Hmm.
and record the screen.
Hmm.
So again, even if we have to use the whiteboarding app and we aren't able to get onto Zoom, or let's say one of the other screen sharing platforms, we still have Slack as an option, and it can also be it's recorded too, right? We've recorded some sessions, right?
Yes, we've recorded it by using some of the built-in tools in Chrome, because Chrome has a plugin that allows you to record it. And then Slack will allow us to share the screen and talk to each other, so it records everything.
See, technology is such a beautiful thing
It
when it
is, and
when it works. When it works,
when it
Joe.
works, when it works,
When it works, it is a beautiful thing. So
it is.
what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Joe, if they want to know more about you, keep up with all
Mhm.
the exciting things you have going on?
Right. You can actually the first thing you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Joseph Powell, and you'll see it will say $10 tutor. So you will see that in LinkedIn if you do a search for me. You can also send me an email directly. I answer 100% of my emails. So the email address is Joseph Joseph at $10tutors.com. TENDOLLARTUTORS.com.
Well, I definitely have to learn your secret for for being so responsive to email. I try. I really do try.
It's a hard thing,
Oh
and I do
gosh.
have other people sometimes delegated to even looking through my email to make sure I haven't missed things. So I also hand it off to them too to help out with that, because I do
Yeah.
every customer is important, every interaction is important. So we want to make sure we do not neglect anyone, even if it's just by accident and say, oh, I missed that. We don't ever want to ever have that excuse of missing someone.
Yes. Well, that's awesome. Joe, thank you so much for coming
Oh,
back
thank
onto
you
the
very
show,
much.
for giving this very informative demo. I hope that everyone who has heard this will be, if you're listening to the podcast only, hopefully you realize that you have to go to businessinfrastructure.tv and see the video version of this, because
Right.
seeing really is believing. It's free. Why not? Oh, one more thing, Joe, before we close or
Hmm.
wrap up. Can you tell people you also have a program where you sell these Surface books at a reduced cost, right?
Yes.
Can we
Yes.
talk about that really quickly?
Yes. So one thing that we are always doing, if there's any schools or any people that are in need, they demonstrate some type of either a lack that you have funding for your school, or some way that basically your school is not being able to get all the access to all of the resources that they need. You can also, through that same email, Joseph at $10tutors.com, send me an email, and I'll make sure that we actually are able to help people get Surface books. So what we'll do is we will do an assessment to figure out where we can best help you, because sometimes it may not necessarily even be hardware. It could just be using the software and providing you with other types of hardware that can help you with um, working onto whiteboards or using computers. Sometimes computers are just part of that. We also even provide grants, and we have some of the commercials running on television right now, to where we're giving grants to certain schools and districts, grants up to $1,000 to help them with some of their infrastructure, which in smaller places, this is invaluable because they really need as much help as they possibly can. And sometimes with this new COVID situation, they're not given very much guidance. So what you just have to do is just initiate the conversation by giving us an email. Um, we'll basically do that assessment, and then we'll set up an appointment and talk to you more in detail about what we can do for every individual school district. And it's not necessarily restricted to schools, because we can also help with small businesses who may need to be able to use, in conjunction with your app that's we're going to be working with the infrastructure and the business parts analysis. We can also leverage the Thinksmart Whiteboard app in conjunction with your app. So we will be able to work with
Absolutely.
businesses as well. So that would definitely be a plus. And right now, we need as much help as we possibly can get. So yeah, that would be great.
Yes. So, what do you think? The Think Smart Whiteboard app is pretty cool, huh? If you're interested in using it, keep the following in mind. For starters, you'll have to make sure that you, as well as the people you want to collaborate with, all have a tablet or a touchscreen PC. Afterwards, follow these steps. Number one, go to the thinksmartwhiteboard.com website to download the app. Again, that's thinksmartwhiteboard.com. Sign up for a free account, and then next, tell the people that you want to collaborate with to also download the app. If they don't have a touchscreen PC, then you can simply set up a Zoom call so that you can share your whiteboarding screen with them. The next thing you want to do is decide what you'd like to do using the app. Some of the ideas that we talked about during this interview include remote tutoring sessions, brainstorming exercises, or even annotating a document. If you do want to annotate a document, then make sure you save the image as a picture file first. Next, invite the people you want to collaborate with to your session. Then start collaborating, save your work, and make sure you end your session. Be sure to go to thinksmartwhiteboard.com for support and tutorials on downloading and using the app. There's also a pro version with even more features, so make sure you check that out too. Thinksmart Whiteboard has been a lifesaver for my business during this pandemic. I use it primarily for my process review sessions. I simply take maps that I've created in Microsoft Visio, save them as an image file, and what I mean by that is either a PNG file or a JPEG, and then I import that into the whiteboard. From there, I can mark up the map based on feedback from my clients during a particular call. Sure, I can do these things live in Visio while sharing my screen on something like a Zoom call, but honestly, I've found that people can complain about not being able to really see the changes as I make them. So I'm curious to know, how can you and your team use Thinksmart Whiteboard? Let me know at businessinfrastructure.tv. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast as well as to our YouTube channel. Once you're there, you can leave a comment on this episode, or you can send me a direct message via social media. If you need a quick tutorial, make sure you watch the video version of this podcast so that you can actually see our screen as Joseph demonstrates the Thinksmart Whiteboard app. Again, you'll be able to do all of that and more at businessinfrastructure.tv. Just look for Season 10, Episode 122. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and for being a loyal subscriber. Remember, stay focused, be encouraged. This entrepreneurial journey is a marathon and not a sprint. Until the next time. Well, Joe, thank you so much. I know you have to get going, my friend. I appreciate your time, and let's get some more users for the Thinksmart Whiteboard app.
Yep. We're looking to make it happen.
Well, thank you so much, Joe.
All right, take care.
Okay.
Thank you.